Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about nutrition, and nutrition during treatment as well as after treatment. My name is Holly Mills. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm also a certified specialist in oncology. I currently work at the Theurer Cancer Center and Hackensack University Medical Center in New Jersey. Prior to my time at Hackensack, I was actually at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and I've been working with cancer patients over the past 10 years, specifically with multiple myeloma and lymphoma for the past 4 years. So I wanted to break it down into a few things you want to consider about eating well when you're going through treatment, and then we'll also discuss just general healthy eating post-treatment. So during treatment, the way your body uses nutrients may actually change, causing your energy as well as your protein needs to increase. Eating well while you're being treated for cancer can help you keep up your strength and your energy. It can help you maintain your weight and your body's store of nutrients. It can also help you better tolerate treatment-related side effects. We'll discuss this further, how diet can really help with the management of those side effects. It can lower your risk of infection and help you heal and recover faster. Obviously, this is common sense. When we eat well and well-nourished, we tend to heal and recover faster post-surgery, post-treatment, even for some of the patients I see post-transplant. So I've included a few tips on eating well during treatment. Again, when we say eating well, that's a very vague statement. So I will go through the components of the diet that make up a healthy, well-balanced diet. But during treatment, there can be some challenges for folks. Loss of appetite is something I see quite common during treatment. So often, if you don't have a very good appetite, it's hard to sit down to 3 large meals. The 3 traditional meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, are a bit difficult. So I'll often talk to patients about choosing small, frequent meals throughout the day. You may end up eating 6 to 8 times a day, but that's okay. If it works better, you can certainly meet your nutrition needs following that type of pattern. Eating a source of protein with all meals and snacks is essential. As I mentioned earlier, when going through treatment, energy needs are higher and protein needs are actually higher. So, in the morning, when I ask folks what they eat for breakfast, sometimes they get a very carbohydrate-heavy meal, cereal and fruit, which is wonderful, but I want to see a little protein added to that. So we're going to talk about how to balance the diet and make sure that you're including all of those major nutrients, especially during treatment. Also, eating a variety of different foods each day. This is vital. When you eat different fruits and vegetables throughout the week, you get all of the nutrients that you need. If you love broccoli or you love spinach, that's great. But if you eat that every day, you may be missing out on some of the nutrients that something like a tomato will bring. So you really want to change it up and eat a variety of foods. And the biggest tip I want you to walk away with today is that if you're being treated for cancer and you're at a hospital or a local cancer center, make sure you connect with the RD at your center, the registered dietitian at your center. If you don't know who that person is, ask your doctor, ask your nurse practitioner, and if the answer is we don't have one at your center, then you can actually go on a site called eatright.org. If you go on eatright.org, you can actually search for a registered dietitian in your area. You put in your zip code, and you can find a list of dietitians, and it's also broken up by specialty. So you can find someone like myself, who's a certified specialist in oncology, and then I really highly advise you to meet with that person. Because while I will give you some really good tips today, nutrition is very individual. What works for you may not work for you. So I really want you to sit with a dietitian and come up with a plan that's individual for your needs. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about what makes up a healthy, well-balanced diet. And I'm including all of the nutrients in this talk. So we're going to start with protein because it is so important. So it is important to include a source of protein with each meal and snack because it helps your body repair and fight infection. It also helps prevent unintentional loss of muscle mass. So good sources of protein include a variety of foods. It may include a meat source of fish, eggs, nut and nut butters like peanut butter and almond butter are great sources of protein, as well as lentils, legumes, and tofu for vegetarian and vegan patients. So you can use a variety of these sources. Also, there's the dairy protein. If you eat a good Greek yogurt, that's a great protein source as well. But you want to make sure that you're including a protein source at each meal and snack, especially for those of you going through treatment. Fats are vital as well. Fats have many important functions in our body. They help furnish energy, they help produce hormones, and they also act as carriers for fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. Certain fats are healthier than others. Unsaturated fats are what we encourage patients to choose for heart health. So good sources of healthy unsaturated fats include olive oil, canola oil, peanut oil, nuts and nut butters, avocado. Also, the omega-3 fatty acids found in fish, walnuts, and flax seeds have additional health benefits. One omega-3 fat in particular, EPA, has been found to be helpful in preventing weight loss and that accompanies some cancers. So I just want to encourage, think outside the box in terms of fat, just to backtrack. A good way to incorporate some healthy fats. If you go down and make that salad, put a little olive oil and lemon vinaigrette for a dressing. If you're going to have a sandwich, maybe think about adding avocado instead of mayonnaise. There's different ways you can be creative to include healthy fats in your meals. Carbohydrates are part of a well-balanced diet. I know they get a bad rap, and a lot of people want to eliminate carbohydrate from their diet, but I do not want you to do that. We do need carbohydrates. They provide our body with energy. We are like cars. We run on fuel, and we do need all of these nutrients, including carbohydrates. Good sources of carbohydrates that are best to choose are high-fiber carbohydrates, things like whole wheat bread or whole grain pasta, whole grain cereal, oatmeal, grains like barley or quinoa, whole grain couscous. Whole grains are plentiful in vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Now, I say this as the preferred choice of carbohydrate. Eat plenty of fiber, choose whole grains. This works if everything is going okay. If you're going through treatment and you're not having any major GI side effects like a diarrhea or gas or bloating, go high on the fiber. I love that. If, however, like many of my patients, that I see, some of them have periods of time where they are having looser stools or gas and bloating and diarrhea. If you're having those symptoms, you may not be able to handle the fiber at that time. So during that time, when I talk about symptom management later, I will say, if you're having diarrhea, choose white grains, just a white bread or a Rice Krispie, a refined grain, because we don't want to make the diarrhea worse. Fiber makes us go. So if you're going frequently and the bowels are loose, that's not the time to load up on the fiber. But outside of that, if bowels are fine, please choose the higher fiber foods. They are nutritionally the better choice. Fruits and vegetables. So this is where we get our micronutrients, our vitamins and minerals. Instead of looking to supplements, I ask you to include a variety of fruits and vegetables each day. A combination of maybe 5 is all you really need, and that can be 3 vegetables, 2 pieces of fruit to meet your vitamin and mineral needs. And variety is key. As I mentioned earlier, choose different fruits and vegetables. Again, if you love an orange or an apple, great, but the next day try to choose some berries. Really shake it up and change your intake so you get all of the different vitamins and minerals that fruits and vegetables have to offer. I want to bring up GI side effects again. If you're experiencing loose stools or diarrhea and you cannot tolerate raw fruits and vegetables, that's fine. Maybe choose well-cooked fruits and vegetables. Peel the skin off of that apple and just eat the inside. Work with a dietitian. We can still meet your nutrient needs, but in a way that you better tolerate them. So I have some folks who are trying to be so healthy that they have terrible GI side effects and they're eating tons of these fruits and vegetables and then paying the consequence. So then I work with them to kind of redesign the diet in a way that you get these fruits and vegetables in, but not as much fiber, and you tolerate them a little bit better. Fluids are vital, okay? Water or fluids in general, we have to aim for at least 8 to 10 cups a day. All body cells need water to function. Especially if you're going through treatment and you're having side effects like diarrhea or vomiting, you need to make sure you're staying hydrated and replacing those fluids, and you may even want to include fluids with electrolytes. I say Gatorade. Some people will look at me and say, not for me, it's just too sweet. If that's the case, they do have G2, which is a version with less added sugar, but there's also coconut water. Pedialyte for children comes unflavored. There's natural sources of electrolytes. You can have a chicken broth or a vegetable stock, and that can be a source of sodium for you. So if you're, again, experiencing vomiting or diarrhea, your fluid intake should include some electrolytes. Outside of that, just general water, getting your average 8 to 10 cups of fluid in is enough. So I wanted to spend some time today talking about managing symptoms and side effects through nutrition. And I want to emphasize, your side effects and your symptoms are going to be managed medically by your team first. So your doctor or your nurse will come in and recommend prescriptions that help with the management of some of the side effects you experience. And so you have to make sure that that's set in place. But in addition to that, there are a few things that you can do with your diet that help. They're common sense. Sometimes we just forget them. You're going through a lot. but that's why a dietitian's there to reinforce, hey, let's just make a few dietary changes. This may help with your symptom management as well. So loss of appetite, as I mentioned earlier, I personally experience this a lot with my patient population. Certain regimens, you just don't have the appetite you had before treatment. So in that case, small frequent meals just works better in the presence of poor appetite. You end up eating every few hours, maybe it's 6 times a day, maybe it's 8 times a day instead of those 3 main meals, but that's okay. The only thing I ask is that if you are eating small frequent meals, the meals are balanced. So what I mean, they have some carbohydrate, they have a little protein and a little fat. So I can use a peanut butter sandwich, okay? Your protein and fat is coming from the peanut butter, your carbohydrate is coming from the bread, nice mini meal. Even if you had half of that sandwich, it has all of the major nutrients you need. If you spend, I have many patients who say, oh, I had something today, I had a few grapes. That's not enough. That's not a mini meal. So again, we have to work to make sure all of the nutrients are in that mini meal that you have. But if they're balanced and they're high calorie, high protein, you can certainly change your regimen, eating and get all of your nutrition needs met by eating 6 to 8 times a day. Drinking calorie-dense beverages, that can work as well. So sometimes it's easier to drink than eat when you have a poor appetite. So we'll talk later about liquid nutrition supplements or homemade smoothies that work. But think about calorie-dense beverages. Again, I love water. It's important. But if you also need to meet your calorie needs, and if you're losing weight, we may need to talk about calorie-dense beverages as well. Having your favorite snacks available at home and work. Again, if you're working at this time, we're there many hours. I know I'm at work at least 8.5, maybe 9 hours per day. So I always have healthy snacks at work. And again, snacks that are nutrient dense. So like a nice trail mix, nuts and dried fruit, or some whole grain crackers and peanut butter. But those little snacks can get you through until you can actually go and have your next meal. And eat your favorite food any time of the day. There are no rules. If eggs are working, if you enjoy an egg and it's easy to tolerate, you can have an egg for dinner. It doesn't just have to be for breakfast. So feel free to eat your favorite foods any time of day, especially in the presence of poor appetite. So I mentioned liquid calories, nutrient-dense beverages. They are certainly helpful, especially if there's some weight loss going on and you really need to up your calorie and protein intake. There's a lot of products available out there, and it can be overwhelming. So again, working with a registered dietitian to ask which product's best for me. You may have specific needs. You may also have diabetes. You may be on dialysis. You don't know which product to pick. So that's where we come along and we give you a list of all of the things that are out there. So, Ensure, most people have seen Ensure. There's plenty of commercials for Ensure and Boost. If you do buy these products, we encourage the Plus version because the Plus version is higher in calorie as well as higher in protein. For some folks, I met with a woman last week, she just can't drink Ensure or Boost because of the thickness. It's just too thick for her. She cannot tolerate it. So she wanted something thinner, something that's more like a juice. So Ensure and Boost have clear products. They are apple flavored, peach flavored. They are very thin. They're like a juice, but they're fortified with calories and protein. So they're another option we use for patients. There's also organic products like Orgain. This is sold in Whole Foods and it's also online. So this is, it has less added sugar. They actually tend to use more natural flavors to flavor the Orgain, but it is a high calorie, high protein supplement. So I have many patients on that as well. Carnation Breakfast Essentials used to be called Carnation Instant Breakfast. Most people have seen it. It's in the cereal aisle. It's been around for years. It tastes pretty good. You mix that with whole milk and you have a high calorie, high protein drink. So again, that works as well. And I mentioned if you have another condition that you're dealing with, like diabetes, there's a few products out there. Glucerna and Boost Glucose Control are two that I'm familiar with. They are made for patients with blood sugar issues. So whether it's diabetes that you already have or it's new onset diabetes or hyperglycemia due to the steroids that you're taking, then maybe one of these products are best for you. And then if you're on dialysis, there's a product called Nepro. So it has less electrolytes than the Ensure or the Boost. It's made for the patient on dialysis. And then there's protein powder. This is one I'm familiar with, but whey protein powder you can buy anywhere. You can buy it in your local CVS. And the protein powder is really if you wanted to make your own shake. And that leads me to the next slide. This Make Your Own Smoothie slide was created by one of my colleagues at the Cancer Center where I work. It's a great handout. It's really a way to build a high-calorie, high-protein shake. So what we recommend is that you start with a liquid-based. So that may be milk. Some people can't tolerate milk, so they use lactated milk or almond milk or rice milk. That's fine. Or they use a supplement like Ensure or Orgain. You start with your liquid base. Then you make sure to add a protein source. And that protein source may be a Greek yogurt. It can also be a nut butter or some chia seeds, whatever the protein source of your choice. And then some additional nutrients for flavor and fiber. If you're looking for more fiber, maybe adding in your favorite fruit or vegetable. And then last, building flavor with things like cinnamon or vanilla extract just to flavor it in a way that you enjoy. And I have many patients who do this because they don't like the over-the-counter products. So if you have a NutriBullet or a blender, just a good old-fashioned blender, and you want to think about being creative, take a photo of this and, think about building your own smoothie at home. It really does work, especially if you're losing weight and need those extra calories. And additionally, if you need those extra calories and you're, making a shake like this, go higher on the fat. I know a lot of people go to the 0% yogurt or the skim milk, but if you need the extra calories, it's the time to pick something like a 2% milk or a higher fat yogurt, okay? Okay, so we'll move on to a few symptoms, again, that I tend to see during treatment. Nausea and vomiting, unfortunately, is one I see fairly often. So I mentioned small, frequent meals for loss of appetite. Small, frequent meals also work for nausea and vomiting. I know it's easier said than done when you're nauseous to say, try to eat something. But if you go many hours without eating anything, it actually makes the nausea worse. So it can be something very small, a few crackers, a handful of pretzels. Something that's dry and starchy tends to work best if you're nauseous. The foods I would avoid when experiencing nausea: fried foods, spicy foods, fatty foods, or very sweet foods are not tolerated very well in the presence of nausea. Keep it bland. That's why things like good old-fashioned chicken rice soup, chicken noodle soup, a piece of chicken and mashed potato without the skin, take the skin off the chicken, keep it very lean. Lean proteins like turkey and chicken work best when experiencing nausea. And talk to your healthcare team. Most of the time, if you're getting treated and nausea is a side effect of your medication, the team has recommended an anti-nausea medication for you. But often I go to speak to my patients and I say, are you taking your anti-nausea medication? And they'll say yes, but it's not working. And I'll say, did you tell your doctor? And they'll say no. So what I ask you to do is just let your team know. If that anti-nausea medication is not working, have a conversation. There are a lot of products out there. They can switch you to another medication. So, the diet tips are to work together with your medication. So make sure that you're on the right regimen. And last, if you're experiencing any vomiting, as I mentioned earlier, replace your fluids and pick fluids with electrolytes. So something like Gatorade, Pedialyte, coconut water, good old-fashioned chicken broth for the sodium, for potassium, a little bit of banana. These are natural sources, but make sure you're replacing those electrolytes and fluids. Feeling full quickly. Some of my patients do experience this. They find that when you're eating, you start out, you have a few bites of the meal, and you're already full. And, they say, how am I supposed to get more calories and protein in when I get full after a few bites of food? And again, I talk about let's just switch to small amounts of food every 2 to 3 hours. So if you can eat half a sandwich, half of that peanut butter sandwich, all I ask you to do is watch the clock, and a couple hours later, go back and finish that other half a sandwich. Think about just splitting the meals up into small amounts frequently. And choosing the higher calorie, protein-rich foods, not the light and lively yogurt, the full, higher fat, maybe Greek yogurt. Drink the majority of your fluids before or after the meal. The reason I'm recommending this is because if you get full quickly and you drink a large glass of water before your meal, you're going to get full on fluid and not eat most of your meal. So if you just sip your fluid with the meal and save the majority of drinking before or after the meal, you get more of the food in first. Fortifying meals. So, there's many ways to make foods. If you're losing weight and you're eating small meals, they really do need to be fortified. So if you sit down to make your farina in the morning, you can make that with water, sure. Or you could also make it with a higher calorie milk and add a little of your, a little bit of butter, or if you use a canola spread or olive oil spread, or just, fortify it. Add a little bit more calories and protein to it than you normally would. A lot of times for years, folks have been looking for the low calorie foods and watching their weight, and they go through treatment and they're having difficulty eating, but they're still buying the same foods. So just keep that in mind as you go through this. And additionally, if you feel full quickly, get up and move around a little bit. Physical activity can help the food kind of move through your digestive system. So if you're feeling full and you sit for many hours, it's going to be harder. So just even walking around your home, your apartment, just get up and try to move a little bit after eating. So diarrhea, I did touch upon this earlier. Certain regimens can cause diarrhea, a loose bowel movement, some gas, some bloating. So again, small frequent meals work here. Sometimes the volume. Eating a large meal can trigger a bowel movement for some folks. So I'll have them switch to small amounts of food frequently throughout the day. This is the one time I recommend lower fiber because fiber helps us go. So I ask my patients to pull back on the fiber at this time and to choose some more white refined grain, just a white pasta, pastina, or a white piece of bread. Skinless fruits and vegetables, skinless lean proteins like turkey and chicken. What you do want to avoid are intake of very high fiber foods. High fat or fried foods can set some folks off. So no cream soups or fried shrimp, really keep it on the leaner side. Broth-based soup and broil or like roast your proteins. Spicy foods can be a trigger, so avoid spicy foods. And lactose. So the lactose in milk and in ice cream, it's that the sugar is the lactose in there. It can sometimes loosen up stool for some individuals. So what I will ask you is at that time, they maybe try lactate milk or rice milk and alternative milk just until your bowel movements are normal again. And that seems to work for a lot of folks. Caffeinated beverages, I hate to tell you this, but they're stimulants. So they can also make you go and loosen things up a little bit more. So moving towards the decaf when experiencing diarrhea is helpful. And the last tip, I work with a patient currently, and he swears this has made a big difference, and I know this from previous experience, cutting back on the sugar alcohols, products that have sorbitol, mannitol, xylitol. These sugar substitutes are linked to higher GI distress, more gas, bloating, and loose stools. So, if you're having this symptom, you really want to look through your diet and maybe eliminate some of these things or really cut back on them and see if it helps you. Sometimes keeping a food and symptom diary is helpful as well, writing down what you ate and what you drank for the day and see if you can put your symptoms there and if you find a correlation, because while these are some of the things we know about, I have patients who find other foods that don't work for them at this time. So food and symptom diaries are helpful. You can bring that in and show it to your nurse or your dietitian. And then lastly, again, replace those fluids and fluids with electrolytes, aiming for that 8 to 10 cups per day. Constipation is the flip side of this. I also have many patients with constipation due to pain medication or anti-nausea medication or after surgery. It's a pretty common side effect. So at this time is when I say eat more fiber. This is when we ramp up the fiber. But if you're new to it, I don't want you to go crazy. Introduce fiber slowly, maybe one fiber-rich food per meal. So I don't want you to have like a big, huge kale salad at lunch. Start with a small serving and make sure you're drinking enough fluid, because fluid helps to push the fiber through that system, through your digestive system, to create the bowel movement. So make sure you're drinking enough to kind of keep the fiber going through. High fiber foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains like whole wheat bread, whole grain cereals, brown rice, quinoa, nuts and seeds are all high fiber foods. And increase your physical activity. Movement helps to keep our bowels regular. When we are sedentary, it doesn't help constipation. So actually, when folks have surgery and they're in the hospital and laying in the bed for a while, they tend to get constipated because they're not moving. And that comes along with it. But during treatment, I know there are days that you don't feel good. You don't feel well, that's fine. On the days that you're up to it, even 5 to 10 minutes, just try to walk a little bit. Keep yourself moving throughout the day. For every hour we're sitting, it's recommended we get up and just move a little bit. Okay, it helps with so many things. This leads me to taste change. So with my population, I also work with transplant patients. Taste change is a very common symptom. And the tips I will give you today can help manage taste change, but I can't promise you it's going to take it away, but it will hopefully make it better. I'm going to start with the last tip on this slide. Maintaining good oral hygiene is good for any taste change you're experiencing. So that means rinsing your mouth before and after meals throughout the day, not just at the end of the day before bedtime, but before and after meals. I do recommend, if you're going through treatment, to choose a non-alcoholic mouth rinse, as the alcohol-containing mouth rinse, the traditional Listerines and Scopes, they can actually irritate the mouth. So there are great products out there like Biotine, which is a non-alcoholic mouth rinse, or if you're really creative and you have the energy and want to make your own solution, a little warm water, baking soda, and salt mixed together. We keep this recipe out in my cancer center, and rinse before you sit down to that meal. It can certainly help. Outside of that, there are a few things you can do when you're thinking about meal preparation. Red meat often tastes very different to folks during treatment. So we'll recommend that you try a leaner protein. Try chicken, try turkey, try eggs for dinner, try beans. And even within that, you may have to flavor some more. So sometimes if like a piece of chicken tastes off, but something that's sweet is something that you enjoy right now, I'll say put an apricot glaze or a cranberry glaze on the piece of chicken or turkey and kind of liven it up so that it tastes better to you. If something is salty or bitter, you can, if you cut it with a little something sweet like maple syrup or honey, it actually masks the bitter taste. If you have bland taste, I often hear it just tastes like cardboard. Everything tastes like cardboard. I can't taste my food. Things that are a bit more tart, you tend to taste. So as long as you do not have a sore in your mouth. If you do have a sore in your mouth, please do not try this recommendation. But if you're free of sores, think about trying tart foods like lemon, balsamic vinaigrette, or drinking a lemonade. Those flavors you tend to pick up in the presence of, general lack of taste. If you have a metallic taste, nurses or dietitians may have mentioned this before, try plastic forks and knives instead of regular flatware. That tends to work best. And again, maintain good oral hygiene. This is a figure I got from a book called The Cancer Fighting Kitchen, and I wanted to share it because my patients often ask me, do you know of a good cookbook? Do you know of a good reference? And this is an excellent one, Cancer Fighting Kitchen. It was written by a registered dietitian and a medical doctor, and there's tons of tips and recipes based on, side effects that you may experience during treatment. And I like that it's from credentialed professionals. Many people write nutrition books, but you do want to look for a resource that, you have a credentialed group behind it, a registered dietitian, a doctor, or a nurse. So here, as I mentioned earlier, it's a nice little figure. If something tastes flat, try a little something lively like lemon to spruce it up. If something is a bit too sweet, try something that's a little bit salty. If something is a little too sour, try something that's a little bit sweet. So it gives you different flavoring suggestions to try. Sometimes being as creative as you can with the flavoring at this time can be very helpful when you're having taste change. And it is a reason why people don't eat. If food doesn't taste good, it's natural. You don't want to eat it. So really try hard to work on some of these, tips that I shared with you today and see if it makes a difference. Mouth and throat pain and mouth sores. I wanted to address this as well. Again, if you're going through treatment or if you've been through transplant, you may have a mouth sore. So at that time, again, this is common sense, but I like to reinforce it. Choose foods that are soft, smooth, moist, things like bananas, applesauce, cooked veggies, oatmeal, cottage cheese, yogurt, ground meat instead of a whole piece of meat. And, foods you want to avoid when experiencing mouth sore, citrus fruits, so no lemon or orange. At that time, it could be quite irritating when you're having a mouth sore. Spicy and salty foods I recommend to avoid, pickled foods, tomato-based foods, and rough, coarse, or dry foods. Really keep it soft and moist in the presence of a mouth sore. Dry mouth is something that many patients experience as well due to medications that you're taking. So hydration's key. Make sure you're staying hydrated, drinking your 8 to 10 cups of fluid a day. Avoid salty foods. Salty foods can actually dry you out more, so try to avoid salty foods. And again, if your mouth is not sore, try the tart foods because the tart foods in small amounts may actually help your mouth to produce more saliva. Eat foods that are moistened with broth or gravy, sauce, salad dressing. So if you have dry mouth, sitting down to a well-cooked piece of chicken that's overcooked, you can't really do that if you have a dry mouth. So you may want to cut up that chicken, add it to a gravy or a sauce, or put it in a soup or stew. Try to think of other ways to add in those proteins. Avoid alcohol, and that includes mouth rinses that contain alcohol. And if your dry mouth is severe, speak with your medical team. They can recommend a variety of saliva substitutes, mouth moisturizers, saliva stimulants. I mentioned Biotin earlier for mouth rinse. They sell a spray as well, a dry mouth spray. That's something you can carry around with you throughout the day if you're not at home for many hours. So really talk to your team because there's no reason to suffer through this. There are a lot of good products out there and a lot of good things you can do with your diet to help manage. Fatigue is something I hear every day. During treatment as well as after treatment, the fatigue may last, even post-treatment. And, the one thing that patients often tell me is it's hard to prepare meals if I'm really tired, and that makes sense. So if you have people in your life, if you have friends and family who are asking, what can I do to help right now? Think about asking them to make a few meals that you can actually keep, put in the freezer, and heat up at a later date. There's also some frozen meals out there, and there's a lot of bad ones. I know that. They are high sodium, a lot of the brands out there, but a few brands do a good job at frozen entrees. Amy's is one of them. So that's a frozen entree product line that does offer some lower sodium option. Healthy Choice is another one. But if you're really not feeling well for a few days out of the week, you may have to rely on something like a frozen meal. Or if that's not for you, if you have some good days where you feel up to it, make extra portions, freeze them, and then pull them out for just heat and eat on the days that you're really just too tired to sit down and make a fresh meal. And have also healthy snacks on hand. So, again, we're like cars. We need to be fed. So it doesn't help fatigue if we're not eating well and if we're not staying hydrated. That 8 to 10 cups of fluid help with our energy levels as well. And making sure that we're feeding ourselves throughout the day also helps sustain energy throughout the day. So nutrient-dense snacks, again, dried nuts and fruit, a whole piece of fruit and nut butter, whole grain crackers and nut butter. Just think about having some of these snacks around at home or at work so that you have the tools you need to keep yourself nutritionally balanced and keep that energy up throughout the day. And engaging in physical activity. There's a lot of good research on this subject. Those who stay active throughout treatment actually manage fatigue better. If you are tired and you sit for several hours, you will become more tired. So what we ask you to do is just get up, try to move around. Walking counts. Any movement counts at all. Cleaning your house counts. If it's formal activity, I do ask you to please speak to your doctor or your nurse, your healthcare team, and get clearance for formal exercise. But most of the time, at least most doctors that I've worked with the past 10 years, as long as the patient is up to it, and they let the team know they're happy that you're engaging in some kind of physical activity. So I wanted to talk about weight management, and this is two different scenarios. During treatment, there's weight loss that often occurs, but for many folks, there's actually weight gain, and that's sometimes surprising to individuals that you can gain weight at this time, but you can. And then post-treatment, there's sometimes weight gain. So I'm going to talk about weight loss first, but then we'll address the weight gain issue as well. So maintaining a healthy weight is often difficult during treatment due to metabolic changes caused by the disease. Nutrient-dense beverages and snacks, as I mentioned earlier, can help with this. Changing meal pattern can certainly help with this. But you don't want to ignore it. I often hear patients, they're happy that they lost 10 pounds, but I don't want to see it this way. We don't want it to happen this way. So really, we can always talk about, losing weight healthfully post-treatment, but, if it's coming off unintentionally because you don't feel like eating, please talk to your healthcare team and let them know so we can work with you to kind of stabilize the weight during treatment. So managing weight loss, a few tips. Again, eat small, frequent meals throughout the day. Think about scheduling meal times. If you have loss of appetite and you're losing weight, you're probably not getting the hunger cue to tell you it's lunchtime. So watch the clock. The way you would if your doctor told you to take your medication a certain time every single day, watch the clock. If you start breakfast at 9 a.m., by the time we're at 11 to noon, it's time to eat again, even if it's a small portion. So I wouldn't let more than 2 to 3 hours go by, really, if you're having a hard time keeping your weight up and there's loss of appetite. Really set a schedule. We have smartphones. Set an alarm on your phone. I have a patient who does this for food intake and hydration. It's a good reminder just to keep you eating. Have healthy snacks around. Sometimes just seeing a bowl of nuts or seeing your favorite fruit out can be a stimulant and make you want to eat a little bit. So keep those things around. Again, limit fluids during meals because I don't want you to fill up on water and not eat the food. So eat first and then drink your water. And then the nutrition supplement drinks that we talked about earlier. If you just can't really get your calorie and protein needs met through food alone, turn to your nutrition supplement or a homemade smoothie. Weight gain is the flip side of this. So some treatments can actually increase appetite and you feel more hungry. And several different therapies or treatments are connected to weight gain. Hormone therapy, certain types of chemo, and steroids. Steroids are in a lot of the regimens in the patient I see, and they're hungry. So they're gaining weight during this time. And, also the treatments can cause fatigue, as I mentioned. So if you're fatigued and your activity level has decreased, it's easier to gain weight because you're not moving. So how do we deal with this? So with weight gain, and you've probably heard this all before, but I have to reinforce this. Watch your portions. We can even overdo it with healthy foods. If you love avocado and you love nuts, that's great, but that doesn't mean I want you to eat a whole avocado at lunch and a bag, Costco size full of nuts while you're watching TV. Put it in a small bowl, portion it out. Have a quarter of the avocado, not the whole avocado. Really watching portions is key when you're trying to lose weight and maintain weight. Read food labels. You have to know what you're eating. It's awareness. So if you buy a box of cereal, if you buy a beverage other than water, really look at the calories, look at the fat, look at the added sugars, be conscious and read labels. Choosing leaner protein is the way to go when you're trying to lose weight and maintain weight, because leaner proteins have less added fat and calories. So choosing fish or poultry like turkey and chicken is preferred to, or lentils or beans is preferred to red meat when you're trying to watch your calorie intake. And then limit intake of refined carbohydrates, pastries, candies, sugar-sweetened beverages, sugar-sweetened breakfast cereals. This all comes with extra calories. So when you're trying to watch your weight, try to eliminate some of these foods and increase your, as long as you can, increase your intake of fruits and vegetables, because the great thing about them, they're low in calories. So you can have more of them and not have to worry about the portion unless you're adding, this is plain fruits and vegetables. If you're adding tons of butter or cream sauce to your vegetables, that's another story. But naturally, fruits and vegetables are very low-calorie foods. Limit high-calorie snacks in between your meals. Avoid intake of sugar-sweetened beverages. And choose lower-fat cooking methods, so, broiling, steaming, grilling versus frying foods. And, walk daily. If it's okay with your doctor, try to get out and move around, because that certainly is the other part of weight maintenance and weight loss. If we're not moving, it's really hard to lose weight. So even walking every day, you can, monitor your steps on your phone. The goal is 10,000 steps per day. We can't all do that, but start where you are. If you usually get 2,000 steps in per day, maybe your goal is to reach 3,000 next week, but really just try to keep yourself moving. Additionally, activity lowers stress, and a lot of times we eat because of emotion, not out of hunger. So if you're stressed, some folks don't eat, but I have many folks who do like to eat. Many of my patients, it's a comfort. So thinking about ways to manage that stress through physical activity or other activities you like is key. So this brings me to physical activity, and this is important, as I mentioned, during treatment as well as post-treatment. There's so many benefits of physical activity. It can help you regain strength. It can help relieve stress, as I just said. It can help you maintain a healthy weight. If you're going through treatment, it can help you stimulate appetite, improve digestion, help regulate your bowels. There are so many benefits to activity, and any activity that you like is what I ask you to try to engage in. If you don't like to go to the gym, don't choose that as your activity of choice. If you like to dance or go out for a walk with friends, that's the activity for you. So find something you like so you stick with it. And last, again, I'm conservative, and I like to always reinforce this: before you start any exercise regimen, you have to speak to your doctors, your medical oncologists, or your nurse practitioners and get clearance and make sure it's okay with them. So some ways that regular exercise may help during treatment, but this can help after treatment as well. So first of all, improving balance. Being physically active can improve balance and lower risk of falls and broken bones. It can keep your muscles from wasting due to inactivity, lower the risk of heart disease, lessen the risk of osteoporosis, improve blood flow to your legs and lower risk of blood clots, lower the risk of being anxious and depressed, which we talked about earlier, actually lessen nausea, it's been linked to that as well, improve your ability to keep social contacts. And what I need here is, when you're going through treatment, your life may be extremely busy. You may lose contact with family and friends, and they want to see you and they want to spend time with you. So maybe this is a time to do something together, go for a walk together. So it's a way to stay in touch with people in your life as well. It also lessens symptoms of fatigue, and it helps you control your weight. This one we know. If you don't have the energy to do a full 30 minutes or a full hour, that's okay. Break it up into small sessions. You can take a 10-minute walk in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, another 10 minutes in the evening, and you've reached your goal. There is no set rule. You can certainly break up your activity throughout the day, and there's great benefit to that. Choose exercises that you enjoy, as I mentioned earlier. If you like walking with a partner, if you like listening to certain music, choose things you enjoy. Dress comfortably, stay hydrated, drink plenty of water. Warming up is important too. Maybe, walk in place or swing your arms, warm up before you get started. And those everyday chores are also movement. So if you're cleaning one day, doing things around the house, and you're not just sitting watching TV, that's, a way to kind of get your extra exercise in and your steps that day. And then there's also activities like yoga and Tai Chi. They integrate movement and meditation and wellness. Although not aerobic, there's many benefits to these forms of activity. And look for programs at your center. So I work for Theurer Cancer Center. We offer yoga free of charge to our patients. Before this job, I worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Memorial Sloan Kettering offers yoga and exercise, other exercise classes through their integrative medicine department. NYU Clinical Cancer Center used to offer yoga. I don't know if they still do, but the point is many of these centers do. So sometimes you have to ask because it's often hidden and you don't know it's there. So just ask, is there anything you have here for patients that I can, partake in? And obviously listen to your body. If you're not feeling well, if you're running a fever, don't go out and exercise that day. Just common sense. Lastly, this is I always like to include this in my presentations. It's just some good general food safety. If you're going through treatment, it means that there's the chance of a weakened immune system, and you're at higher risk for infection. So we want to practice good food safety and not introduce you to a foodborne illness at this time. These are general food safety tips. If you have been through a transplant, if you have been neutropenic, you will probably be on a special diet referred to as low microbial diet, low bacteria diet, neutropenic diet. Those are very specific guidelines, and you should follow those guidelines per the policy of your hospital, your cancer center. These are general guidelines just if you're going through treatment, but I like everyone to kind of remember these because it is important. So again, if you're going through treatment, it's really not the time to choose raw or undercooked proteins. So if you have a piece of meat or you have an egg or a piece of fish, well cooked thoroughly through is the better way to go because that reduces the risk of bacteria. Unpasteurized dairy, we don't recommend during treatment, higher risk of bacteria. So if you're going to the supermarket for your milk and your yogurt, that's typically pasteurized. If you're going upstate and you pass a local farmer's market, that may be most likely unpasteurized. So that's not the product for you if you're going through treatment. Molded and outdated products, this is common sense for all of us. We shouldn't be consuming these. Unrefrigerated cream-filled desserts like pastries or cannolis, those should be refrigerated for food safety. Usually for my folks going through treatment, I recommend avoiding salad bars, buffets, street vendors in terms of food safety. It's not as safe as a sit-down restaurant or home, obviously. Leftovers, no more than 3 days. After 3 days, there can be some bacterial overgrowth. So no more than 3 days. Discard after that. With canned foods, you want to avoid cans that are damaged, rusted, dented, swollen, and always clean the top of the can before you open that can. And with defrosting, okay, you don't want to defrost foods and then refreeze them. That is not a good food safety practice. Additionally, there are only 2 real safe ways to defrost. So if you want to have, something in the freezer for dinner the next day, take it out the day before, put it in the refrigerator, and let it defrost that way, or use the defrost setting on your microwave. Try to avoid defrosting on the countertop, that old-fashioned method, higher risk of bacteria that way. After food shopping, refrigerate your perishable items immediately. Store cold foods at 40 degrees or below. Check your refrigerators, make sure it's working appropriately. Cook all meats until well done. We talked about that. With produce, if you're allowed to have fresh fruits and vegetables, make sure you're washing them well. So I have a picture here. That's a produce brush. So warm water and a produce brush is a way to give a good scrub to things like potatoes or apples or pears. You can find this in your local Target or Bed Bath & Beyond, stores like that, but it is really good to clean those fruits and vegetables well before consumption. And that concludes my presentation for today. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Again, I thank you all for coming today. It's been a pleasure.